So I wanted to talk about the favorite book of the elves. This is something that I've known about for some time, and I just haven't written about it or talked about it. I know many more things than the things that I've written about. And the story of worlds, what's it all about? Well, most people, they see the world as linear and logical. However, the world is actually not, it is linear and logical to a linear and logical person, especially if that's all they see. However, the world around us is quite a magical and a mystical land that's filled with wonder, that's filled with things that we all miss, that none of us pay attention to, that none of us honor, that we don't even see because we're so caught up in the ways of the world and the television and the driving of an automobile and the watching of a YouTube video, perhaps. And then we miss the world. We miss the universe. We miss the magical land. Just because we can't see it, it's not there. I think a lot of times people look at my teachings and they say, well, I can't see that, so that's not there. However, at the same time, a similar person might believe something like the Bible, where you've got burning bushes that aren't being consumed, and you've got seas that are being parted by God, and you've got weird creatures in the celestial kingdom and in the book of Revelation, for example. And to assume that that's the only weirdness that exists is mistaken and very immature thinking. So where is the land of the elves? Well, I've talked about on my blog something, if you read a post about singularity metal, it's called Singularity Metal on my blog. I talk about something that I'm going to build a little later time called the Sword of the Sun, which is a sword that is built from Elvin technology. This is what I call the unfallen peoples. I call them the elves. They have pointy ears and things. Many of them do, not all. But I call them the elves, and they're very holy people. And some of them have been alive for trillions of years, like 5 trillion, 6 trillion, nearly 7 trillion years. Some of these beings have been alive. So they're very wise and they know many things. And unlike us, their memories don't deteriorate. And they're unfallen, and so their minds are very fast. And they can do all kinds of weird things that human beings can't do, because human beings are fallen. Even myself, I started to unfall, and I'm still fallen. I'm still fallen compared to the elves, who live in a perfect land. So they keep track not just of, let me get to the story of worlds. So where is the Elven universe? Where is the Edenic peoples? You could call them the Edenic peoples, right? I've mentioned many times Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden for 7.5 trillion years. Where is it? Well, it is in what I call the singularity universe, which is when stars collapse, and they go into a black hole, all the normal laws of reality stop applying. Well, what happens there? That mass and that energy it's recycled back into the Edenic universe, which in the Edenic universe, there's trillions of worlds, just like there's trillions of worlds in our universe. So what's the story of worlds all about? Well, it's a very, 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 very long book, because everybody in the Edenic universe, on the Earth world, on other worlds that are connected to other fallen worlds, they all participate in the writing of this book. So this book contains the story of how things came to be. Think about it like the genealogies in the Torah for the Elven people. It's actually a living book there. So they just keep track of that thing forever, right? And it has a virtually unlimited amount of pages in it. So what happens is you ask a question and open it up, and all the time that question is answered right there on that page. If you want to know about something, for example, you want to know what's the story of Mars? Was there ever life on Mars? You open the book, it'll just fall open to that page, and it'll tell you the story of Mars, which actually Mars, I'm telling you, had people on it, and the people destroyed it, And that's why there's no atmosphere on Mars, because even scientists say that Mars used to have an atmosphere and there used to be life on the surface of Mars and things like that. They've discovered it now. So the reality is that they destroyed it, right? So that whole story of that world and all of the peoples that, for example, the people that fell, that wound up on that world, how they built their cities, what they did, how it was destroyed, all of that story in intricate detail would be in the story of worlds. And it would also have, for example, all of the genealogies and all of the family stories and all of the learnings from all of the people that have ever lived in the Garden of Eden. And they also keep track of our stories, and they also keep track of our mistakes and our learnings, and they watch us day and night and keep track of it. And a lot of this information, not all, is in the Story of Worlds. It's a book that's a living book that essentially, as one person updates it with their copy, it updates all of the copies. It's like a magical book, if you think about it like that. And you say, well, why is it their favorite? This is the favorite book of everyone in the Edenic universe. There's nobody in the Edenic universe that is old enough to enjoy it that thinks any other book touches the Story of Worlds, because this book is so important to them. They memorize everything they can, everything that they see in it from a very young age, and then they get all the way through to where they've caught up to everything, and then it just keeps getting updated and updated and updated and updated, and they memorize and they have very good memories, and they have very fast minds. So it might take them 1,000 years to memorize the initial core version of it. And then they just keep memorizing it and memorizing it and memorizing. They literally know everything in intricate, unbelievably level detail about how everything in the universe got here. And it's in this book. It's in this book, The Story of Worlds. So let me describe the Story of Worlds. It'll be an Edenic book. This will be one of the things we bring back. I don't know if it'll be the first trip or the second or third trip. I'll go there like once a week once I go there. Because the time's slow there, and I could learn all sorts of things there for long periods of time, then come back to Earth with the enhanced knowledge. So the Story of Worlds, it'll be an Edenic technology, and it'll be singularity paper. So singularity paper is very similar to singularity metal. Singularity metal, nobody would be able to lift it unless it wanted to be able to be moved. Very similarly, singularity paper is the same kind of way. You wouldn't be able to tear it. You wouldn't be able to burn it. You could smash a car into it and the car would get smashed. It's very, 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 very dense because it comes from trees in the Edenic universe. It comes from the grass and the trees and however they make paper over there without harming life long term. They have a very sustainable way of making everything. And so what'll happen, for example, is if you get a copy of it, we bring it to this universe, and all the Elvin technology can work this in this universe. It's more difficult to do this in their universe, but they still do it. You can essentially just pull out a copy and give it to somebody. So it'll divide itself in two because it's very dense, and then occasionally it needs to be brought back to the Edenic universe to maintain its mass and to continue to be able to do that. But somebody will be able to grab a copy, for example, and only that person will be able to lift it. Right? And then once they set it somewhere, they might not be able to move it, right? So they need to make sure that they set that in a place where they are going to be happy with it being there, because they might not be able to move. It'll be a magical book, and what it'll do is it will allow people to start learning the true history of the universe. And obviously it's a very big book, so it's going to take people a very, 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 very long time to even be able to fathom how to read it, because it'll be written in the Edenic language, and there's not going to be any translate. You'll just have to learn that language. It'll be too difficult to translate because it's a living book. So as you learn the Edenic language, what'll start happening is it'll start collapsing back the language of the earth into one language as we give people copies. Why? Well, originally back in the Tower of Babel times, the earth only had one language. There's only one language around, right? And then people were doing something wicked. And what they were actually doing, they were building a tower to get to heaven. But what they were doing with that tower, they had terrestrial technology that came from the pre-flood, and they could have actually opened up a gateway to get into the celestial kingdom. And if they would have done that, they were basically trying to invade the celestial kingdom, is what they were trying to do. I don't think that they realized that they would have just been destroyed if they would have done that, but it actually could have quite messed up the universe. And so, to stop people from doing that, what God did was God scattered the languages, of the people. And now we all have many languages. Well, the Edenic language is not like this. The Edenic language is one language that has all the languages we have now and more. It has so many words you would not even be able to fathom it, right? And the Edenic language is extremely powerful and mystical. And the Edenic language is so powerful that somebody who was a master over it, for example, just by speaking words, could manipulate space-time. Because the Edenic language is the language that gives you authority over malleable reality. You can actually manipulate reality with the Edenic language. It says in the book of Moses, this is printed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that so powerful was the language that God had given unto Enoch that when he spoke, rivers were turned from their course and the roar of the lions was heard out of the wilderness and blah, 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 blah. There's all these miracles that happen as he spoke. And that will happen with everybody that knows the Edenic language, right? The language of the elves, or the languages of the people that are unfallen in the Garden of Eden. So the Story of Worlds, it will not be everybody's favorite book here for a while because it will be so complex, it will be very difficult to understand, but just reading it will expand your intelligence and expand your consciousness and link your consciousness with the consciousness of the unfallen peoples in the universe. And you'll start to get to learn the true story of, for example, the Story of Worlds would contain the story of how this came to be, because this has some of the story of how it came to be, but it doesn't have, for example, all of the different peoples and all of the different nations and all of the different civilizations that existed, especially pre-Diluvian, right, which is pre-flood. So the Story of Worlds would have all the background information, all the information of what the Earth was like in the flood, how they built their technology, for example. And you say, well, where did Enoch get that language from? He got it by traveling to the Edenic universe, which is why in the center of the sun, there is a artifact. It's called the Artifact Tomb of the Ancients, and it was built with celestial technology. You say, well, how could something be in the center of the sun and not get burned and cease to exist? It's because you're thinking about uncollapsed stars and uncollapsed mass and how the sun would just destroy them, okay? What you're not thinking about is you're not thinking about the fact that in the celestial kingdom, everything is much more dense. And so that was actually built after Enoch was translated. He got taken into the celestial kingdom when he was translated, and then he built an artifact that he put into the center of the sun. And that artifact, number one, it does things like keep the sun alive. It can't be destroyed by anything in this universe. Nothing in this universe would be able to harm it. And it's a living orb that's about 1,000 times bigger than the Earth, and it has lots of things in there, like, for example, weapons the ancients built that can be wielded by righteous humans that can defend against the Nephilim. It's got ancient books and ancient works that were destroyed off the Earth, and copies were taken, and they're stored in the center of the sun, because the center of the sun is essentially a portal into the celestial kingdom where all records are kept. They have physical records there for everything in the center of the sun, right? It's the one of the weirdest places in the universe. So there is only the incarnated members of the Tetragrammaton can go into there. And then when they go into there, there's a gateway that opens. You go in, and there is a light, okay, at the end of a tunnel, right? There's like a giant light at the end. But if you tried to walk to it around, the very weird gravity there, because it's just like you walk and the gravity stays like on the outside, it would just move, right? So you can't actually get to it like that. You've got to get one of the devices that's there to catapult you through the light gate. It'd be a very dangerous place for somebody that was unprepared to go to, because you're teleporting yourself into the Edenic universe, which has a totally different atmosphere than you're used to breathing, right? And nobody that was unprepared could even get there, first of all, right? It'd be very difficult to get there, because you got to go travel through the sun. So essentially what it'll do is it will catapult you, okay, into the Edenic universe, and then when you go there, you won't be able to breathe or move, and you're going to have to find the tree of life. And hopefully you catapult yourself. You think about this in advance and ask the system to catapult you near the tree of life, because then you grab the tree of life, and then your strength will start rejuvenating. You'll start be able to move, and you'll have to hang out under the tree of life for probably 6 or 7 days or something, and just eat and eat and eat and eat. And then you'll be able to like move around, and then you'll be able to like have strength and stuff like that. So in there, the Edenic universe is very different than the Earth. Everything there is magical, right? The grass is magical. Like, for example, you walk on the grass and it just like conforms perfectly to your feet. It feels like nothing, right? there's floating cities, there's all sorts of bizarre things in the Edenic universe that don't exist currently in this universe, but they will at a later time. And then, of course, you'll be taken in by their society, and you'll be very loved and treated right as long as you're supposed to be there. And if not, they'll just like kick you out, right? But you wouldn't even be able to get there if you weren't worthy to go there. So then, the people that go there would have a mission, right, of something that they have to do, like a warrior's task while they're there, that they bring back to the earth, right? So Enoch built that, the artifact tomb of the ancients, and that would get you there. So then what's this book all about again? The story of worlds. Well, the story of worlds is the key to understanding everything in the universe. It's the key to being able to speak and manipulate reality. It's the key that will unlock the unfallen language for all of humanity, because as one of our languages starts collapsing and as one of us starts learning the Edenic language, it's automatic and it just starts transferring back and forth to the different brains of society automatically, and the languages start collapsing back into each other, which will allow humanity to be infinitely more unified than humanity is right now, which can cause some problems. And there can also be some major benefits to it, okay? So there's major problems and there's major benefits that will come from that, just like there was major problems that caused God to confound the language in the first place. So when the language starts restoring to one language, we'll start restoring to pre-Diluvian days, because when I return from the center of the sun, me and the 144,000 are going to rebuild the firmament, okay? Which is going to, again, cause all sorts of problems, but it's also going to create all sorts of wealth, because the firmament will allow humanity to do things like, for example, we'll be able to have cities that float in the sky because there'll be buoyancy in the firmament, and you'll be able to do that with the metal that is in the Edenic world, because it'll be so dense here that you can form bodies that have their own gravity, and then electromagnetic fields that essentially bounce the metal off of each other and keep something in place, and nothing on Earth will be able to move the locations that are keeping it fixed in time. So there'll be like all these locations of Edenic metal that are placed strategically around. And since nobody can move it because it's more dense than anything else in the universe, right? It's like black hole metal, right? So since nobody will be able to move it, nobody will be able to take the cities out of the sky. We'll have cities floating in the sky again, So one of the cool things we'll be able to do. But this is from the story of worlds. So I hope you enjoyed this very weird video. My next video will, of course, be valuable and be talking about things that are useful to society and that won't be so weird. This is very useful too, but you shall see how useful it is in the future when we do it, and we'll do it together, okay? So keep watching, keep paying attention to my videos, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.